and welcome back to my channel. So today's video, we are going to talk about reading in foreign languages and specifically in French because that's what I do the most of. So if you guys have been around for a while, you guys know that I have a couple videos about different language learning aspects, things that I've worked on, how I structure my studies and all of that. And I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go a little bit dive a little bit deeper into how I pick books to read in a foreign language. So I have also read books in Spanish, which I would say that I am much more comfortable, for example, watching TV shows and watching movies in Spanish. I do read in Spanish, but I'm just not as comfortable with it. But I really have worked on reading in French. That was something that when I first moved to France, I really started trying to work on, and I've gotten to the point now where I don't read a ton in French just because reading is still, it's one of my favorite hobbies. It's one of the things that I love to do. I read for fun as opposed to reading because I have to sort of thing. So I do try and set goals to read in French, but it is a very small percentage of the books that I actually read in a given year. So for 2019, I actually set a goal of reading 5 books in French, and I reached that goal, which is fantastic. But as you might imagine, I read, I think, between 70 and 80 books in 2019, and 5 of those were in French. So to give you an idea, it's a very small percentage. But after having read a number of books in French, I will say that I have a couple of authors that I go back to, and I have a couple of authors that I find really good for starting out. So what I did is I kind of looked through some of the books that I've read in French, and I picked out my 3 favorite authors for reading in French. And these are not the only authors that I've read in French, but I think these are pretty good if you're starting out. Again, this advice is going to be applicable if you learn languages kind of in a similar way I do, if you like to read similar books that I like to read. Otherwise, this might not work for you. But I will give you guys kind of my top 3 authors that I like to read in French. So number 3, I'm starting from kind of my least favorite to my favorite. Number 3 is Guillaume Musso. So Guillaume Musso does kind of, I would call them like beach reads. So if you guys know what I mean, like he does kind of detective stories, but they're beach reads. They're not super complicated stories. The vocabulary is fairly simple. I would say kind of on par with like reading Dan Brown. You know, not going to be using a lot of like really complex vocabulary. You're going to have a fast-paced story, so they're easy to kind of get into. And I found when I was first starting out reading in French, especially I think this was the first like long form novel that I read. I think they're between, I don't know, 200 and 400 pages, something like that. And I found it pretty easy to read when I first started out. I think I first read Guillaume Musso after I'd probably only read 1 or 2 books in French by the time I found Musso, and I found them to be pretty easy to read. I didn't have to look up a lot of words, so it was a good kind of level to start out. So if you like, and disclaimer, if you like detective novels, these are going to be good recommendations for you. If you like reading other stuff, then maybe not. So I will say that I think I read 2 of Musso's books, and after 2 I got kind of bored because, as I mentioned, they are kind of beach reads, and that's the kind of stuff I like to read sometimes, but I do like reading detective novels that have just like a tiny bit more meat to them. And so that was when I moved over to Michel Bussi. And the thing that's cool about Michel Bussi is he actually is from my town. So he actually works at the University of Rouen, but he does novels that are based in different places. So I've read 2 of his, and one that I read was based in France, and the second one I read was based in France and in the US. And I really like his stories. They're kind of fun detective novels. There's a little bit more like intrigue and plot twists and that kind of stuff than you'll get with Musso. But the vocabulary is still fairly accessible, I would say. Obviously, it's going to depend on the topic of the book, but overall, you don't have to look up a ton of words. I found that I didn't have to look up a ton of words. I think there were maybe 2 or 3, especially with the second book that I read of his. It was Gravé dans le sable, and it was based in like World War II in Normandy, and so there were a couple of like military terms that I had to look up just because I didn't know what they were. Otherwise, in terms of understanding the story itself, I didn't have to look up a lot of words. Then my top absolute most favorite author to read, honestly in any foreign language so far, well, Spanish and French for the moment, but I'm thinking probably in Italian too, is Agatha Christie. So First off, her books are pretty short. They're like 200 to 300 pages. I love Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot. Those are the two that I read the most of. I know she has other characters that she deals with, but those are the two that I read the most of. And she's got a ton of books. So I have read, when I first started out, I focused on rereading books I have already read in English so that I had some kind of a context for the story. But now I'm looking for books that I haven't read of hers because honestly, they are almost as easy for me to read at this point in French. The Agatha Christie books in French are almost as easy for me to read at this point as they are for me to read in English, which is awesome. I will say I've been working at reading in French for the past like 3 or 4 years, so it's taken me a while to get to this point. But if you're just starting out, I really recommend start with her short stories, start with stuff you've already read before, and it really helped me feel more comfortable, feel more confident reading in French, and it just, yeah, it helped me so much. So if you're looking for things to read directly in French, I would recommend Musso for just starting out and Bussi once you get a little bit more comfortable. For absolutely beginning to read in French, I really recommend Agatha Christie. Like I said, start out with stuff you already know and then move on to books that you haven't read of hers. She's got a lot, so you have a lot to choose from. And yeah, honestly, that has been my method. When I sit down to read, so I typically read in French before I go to bed. So I don't have a dictionary with me. I don't have my phone, so I don't have word reference or anything like that. If I read something and it comes up a couple of times, usually the next day I will try and remember to look up the word, or I have a piece of paper by my bed so I can note it down, but very honestly, I don't do it very often. I really try to, I've gotten pretty good at choosing books that are at a level that I'm going to be able to understand most of, so that, I can start incorporating more difficult books, but this is giving me honestly just the hours of practice that you need to really get comfortable doing something new. And so this has been the method I found that has helped me the most in becoming more comfortable reading in French. So if you guys read in foreign languages and you have other favorites that you like to read, let me know down below. As I mentioned, these are not the only things that I have read in French or in Spanish for that matter, but these are kind of the authors that I come back to again and again. And for example, I want to start reading in Italian soon, and I already have some Agatha Christie books that I am going to work on first, because I know those are books that are pretty accessible for me at my level of reading and at the level of vocabulary that I have. So hopefully that's helpful if you are looking to start reading in a foreign language. If you have any other comments or questions, let me know, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.